"Valerie, why are you sitting there? I don't remember inviting you." That's what she said to me when I attended Madeline's wedding, with a smug look on her face. Madeline continued, "Get out of here, you unemployed loser. You want to embarrass me even more." Her words extinguished any remaining goodwill I had for her. "Fine. I'll stay out of your life from now on." As I left the venue, a commotion broke out, and people rushed in, ignoring Madeline's cries for help. I left the venue with Conrad. I'm Valerie, a freelance illustrator. Conrad, whom I married a few years ago, is currently away for work. One day, feeling a bit lonely, I got news that my mom back home had fallen down the stairs and fractured her leg. Though it wasn't a severe injury, she needed help until she recovered. The question was, who would provide that care? Dad had recently hurt his back and was using a walking stick, so he couldn't help Mom. I thought my sister, Madeline, who lives at home, could take care of her, and I'd help on weekends. But Madeline said, "It's just a fracture. She can walk. She doesn't need care." She's always been insensitive. She never lends a helping hand and often makes insensitive comments. I couldn't trust her to take care of Mom, so I decided to move back home to care for Mom while Conrad was away. My parents were thrilled, but Madeline wasn't. "Why are you back? You're in the way." Every time we crossed paths in the kitchen or living room, she glared at me. Whether she's always seen me as an enemy or as jealous, I don't know, but dealing with her is a hassle, so I ignore her. Still, she continued to harass me. I took over the household chores for Mom, but Madeline complained about my cooking and even threw laundry into my room. Childish, but I said nothing. 2 weeks after I moved back home, Madeline knocked on my door. I opened it, wondering what was so important. "Aren't you going to work?" "Work. You never leave the house except for shopping or the hospital. You're not working, are you?" I explained that I'm a freelance illustrator and work from my laptop, but she didn't get it. "So you're saying you draw pictures on your laptop and make money? That's no different from being an unemployed shut-in. Having an unemployed person in the house is the worst." She stormed back to her room, stomping her feet. A few days later, Madeline said, "I want you to meet someone. Wait in the living room." We waited as instructed, and she brought in a tall, slender man with a hopeful face. The mole under his left eye seemed to highlight his hopeful appearance. "Nice to meet you all. I'm Rodney, Madeline's fiancé. Thank you for making time for me today," the man said, extending his hand for a handshake. Caught off guard by the unexpected guest, my parents and I returned the greeting. We hadn't known Madeline had a fiancé, and it seemed neither had our parents. We exchanged puzzled glances as we listened to their story. I met Rodney at work. He is a very sincere, capable, and wonderful person, Madeline gushed. "Madeline, don't flatter me too much. You're making me blush," Rodney chuckled. The two laughed and talked about how they met, what attracted them to each other, and what kind of life they planned to lead after marriage. Apparently, Rodney was drawn to Madeline's outgoing and cheerful personality. The Madeline I know is rebellious, self-centered, and lacking in empathy. I couldn't believe she was described as social and amazing. "I really want to marry him. Please give us your blessing for our marriage." The two looked earnestly at my parents, waiting for their approval. From my perspective, Rodney seemed too good for Madeline, so I had no objections to their marriage. My parents felt the same. Though surprised by the sudden news, they smiled and seemed to give their blessing. After Rodney left, as I was cleaning up the tea and snacks, Madeline spoke to me. "Jealous, aren't you, Valerie? Jealous of what?" "I'm marrying a wonderful, good-looking, high-earning man, something you could never pull off," I responded to Madeline's smug, taunting smile. "I'm not jealous. I'm actually happy you found someone so wonderful." Her expression twisted, probably because she didn't get the reaction she was hoping for. She sighed dramatically and said, "The snacks you served Rodney were so cheap. Couldn't you have prepared something more upscale?" "Oh, but you're unemployed, so you can't afford it. If I knew you were bringing your fiancé, I would have prepared something appropriate." "Oh, you should have sensed it from my happy vibe lately. I really hate how you can't read a room." Looking at Madeline, I wondered how long a marriage with her could last. I felt concerned for Rodney that night. As usual, I called Conrad. It's a daily ritual. I get lonely easily, and hearing Conrad's voice helps me cope. I told him about Madeline bringing her fiancé. Wow, Madeline has a fiancé? That's great news. Yes, his name is Rodney Bland. He seems too good for her, actually. As soon as I said that, Conrad's tone changed. Wait, did you just say Rodney Bland? Yes, why? Is something wrong? Conrad then accurately described Rodney's appearance, demeanor, and the mole under his left eye. As I expressed my surprise, Conrad continued in a serious tone. Valerie, you need to tell Madeline to reconsider marrying Rodney. He's a scam artist. What? Are you serious? Rodney used to work under me at the company. Because he had been scamming multiple women out of their money and then disappearing, Conrad had been searching for him but couldn't find him. I stopped Conrad from contacting the women who had been scammed. Let's be sure it's him first. I'll get a photo of Rodney from Malene, and then you can confirm, I said. The next day, I asked Malene for a photo of Rodney, saying I'd draw a caricature for their welcome board. She complained, but eventually gave me the photo. When Conrad saw it, he said, "That's definitely him, this scum artist Rodney. Convince her to reconsider before she loses any money." I was planning to do that anyway, I replied. Malene may dislike me, but as her sister, I want her to be happy. Still, as Malene's older sister, I think it's natural to want Malene to be happy, I thought to myself. I immediately told Malene the truth about Rodney, but she didn't believe me. "You're just jealous and trying to ruin my fiancé's reputation," she exclaimed. "I'm not. Conrad told me about him. You should really reconsider. You won't be happy," I tried to persuade Malene. But almost every day she got angry and stopped talking to me. I even asked my parents to talk to her, but when she found out it was for me, she started harassing me more. She burst into my room yelling, "Get a job, you unemployed loser!" or knocked loudly on my door to disrupt my work. My parents and I tried to warn them, but they didn't listen, saying, "It's the unemployed's fault for not working outside the home." When the neighbors complained, they'd stop making a fuss, but they didn't stop harassing me. My patience and goodwill as her sister were gone. Some might say she's your only sister, you should try harder. But there's nothing more I can do for someone who won't listen and harasses me excessively, I thought. I gave up on convincing Malene and decided to consult with Conrad and my parents about taking action. On the wedding day, I brought a nominal wedding gift and headed to the venue. The venue was incredibly lavish, and the food was extravagant. Malene's friends and relatives were already there, enjoying the feast. As I watched the food being brought out one after another, I suddenly noticed something. Not even a single drink had been served to me, while my parents had a full-course meal in front of them. When I asked the staff, they said, "Please wait a moment, we'll check," and went away. After a while, Malene, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, walked over, the sound of her heels clicking. "Valerie, why are you sitting there? I don't remember inviting you," she said. Not just me, but my parents, the guests, and the staff all looked at Malene in surprise, I noted. The venue that was buzzing with activity just moments ago has now gone eerily silent, and whispers filled the air, I added. Despite being the center of negative attention, Malene looked at me smugly. "You dare show up here after insulting my fiancé? I can't believe you." "Oh, you're unemployed, so you probably don't even know when you're being rude," she continued. My parents, standing next to me, chimmied in, "Stop it, Malene. This is a wedding." Ignoring them, Malene continued to berate me. "How can I have a wedding if people find out my sister is unemployed? Just leave. You're embarrassing me." I let out a deep sigh and stood up. After exchanging glances with my concerned parents, I locked eyes with Malene. "Malene, I came here to celebrate your wedding as your sister, but clearly you don't want that. What a shame. Who would be happy to be blessed by someone unemployed like you? Just go." "One last thing. Are you sure you won't regret it if I leave? Because if I do, we're probably done as sisters," I said, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. Cutting ties with an unemployed sister, that's perfect. "Leave now," Malene retorted. With that, any lingering affection I had for her vanished. "Fine, we're done. Don't contact me again, I told Malene firmly. I heard Malene arguing with our parents as I left, but it was no longer my concern. I pulled out my cell phone and called Conrad. You can come in now, no need to hold back, I said. Got it, Conrad replied and called out to someone. Soon after, a group of women who had been waiting outside rushed into the venue. Rodney, Plain, bring him out! Their angry shouts and the gasps of the surprised guests reached me outside. Moments later, the door burst open, and Rodney, the groom, dashed out, sweating profusely. He tried to run away but was caught by Conrad, who had been waiting near the door. Got you, Rodney. You're not getting away, Conrad said. What are you doing here? Rodney asked, panic evident in his voice. A furious Malene and the group of women rushed over to the stunned Rodney. You're ruining everything. Get away from my fiancé, Malene shouted, launching herself at Conrad. I grabbed her arm to stop her. She turned around, surprised at first, but then her face contorted in rage, and she grabbed my collar. This is your doing, isn't it? You're the worst kind of person. I told you multiple times to reconsider this marriage, didn't I? She accused me angrily. You chose not to listen as I say this. I turned my gaze towards Rodney and explained about the women surrounding him. Rodney here has been dating these women and scamming them out of their money. They intend to sue him. What? You're joking, right? This isn't funny, Medine. Looks at Rodney, who's being restrained by Conrad. He awkwardly avoids eye contact. Seeing this, Malene mutters, You can't be serious, Rodney. And he looks down, visibly shaken. Rodney, with a forced smile, addresses the women surrounding him. Why go through the hustle of suing? Let's settle this. I'm marrying a wealthy woman. I can pay you off, right? Malene, wealthy? Me? Confused, Malene trembles as she speaks. I don't have that kind of money. What? I lied about being wealthy so I can't pay any settlement or severance. What then? What about the $2,000 you've been giving me? That was for our wedding. You said to leave it to you, so I did? You didn't spend it, did you? I blew through that $20,000 in a day. What? Are you kidding me? Give it back, my $20,000. Everyone present is dumbfounded by their exchange. Rodney, who scammed women for money, and Malene, who lied about being wealthy to marry him. Maybe they're a match made in heaven. The guests who had gathered, upon hearing the commotion, react in various ways, some whispering, others watching in disbelief. After arguing with Rodney for a while, Malene notices the attention and starts yelling, What are you looking at? Leave. The wedding is over. Just leave your wedding gifts and go. She orders the staff to remove the guests, then rushes over to me. Valerie, you were right. If I had listened to you, I wouldn't be in this mess. I'm sorry. Please help me. Your demeanor doesn't suggest she's truly sorry. She's just trying to salvage a situation. Conrad, who has returned to my side, silently shakes his head. I nod in agreement, shake off her hand and say, I told you we're done. We're strangers now. I won't help you. What? What are you saying, Valerie? You're abandoning your only sister. I don't have a sister anymore. Goodbye, and let's never cross paths again. Wait, Valerie! Ignoring Malene's calls, Conrad and I leave the venue. Later, I hear from my parents about Malene and Rodney. Malene was disowned and kicked out of the family home. She moved in with Rodney since they were already legally married. Rodney, who was sued by the women, had to take out loans to pay them off. Their marriage fell apart due to financial strain, and they divorced. Both are now destitute. About 6 months after Madeline's wedding, my mom's fracture healed, and life returned to normal. My remote assignment ended, and I returned home, occasionally visiting my parents. A year later, Conrad and I were blessed with a child. With help from our parents, we're living happily with our new family.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, One had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.